Hello, my name is Christine Zaborski, and I'm going to be doing a presentation on staffing ratios, mainly nurse to patient ratio. So the learning outcomes for today after this presentation will be the learner will be able to describe 3 reasons why high nurse to patient ratios negatively affects the patient and patient safety. The learner will be able to describe how high nurse to patient ratios negatively affect the nursing staff and medical facility. The learner will identify which QSEN competency is related to the issue, and the learner will be able to answer the discussion question. So basically, nurse to patient ratios, we all have been there. We go to work, we get our assignment, and we see we have like 7 patients assigned to us, and we think, wow, that's really unfair and really unsafe to the patient. So the question becomes, at what point is the nurse to patient ratio unsafe, and which ratio is the best and the most effective? Unsafe and high nurse to patient ratios can lead to different negative outcomes, such as higher surgical mortality, higher complication rates due to errors. It affects the patient's safety. There's less nurses on the floor. If a patient needs something, they ring the call bell, no one answers. They try to get up, they fall. So there's many different ways that it affects the patient. Higher patient workloads are also linked to negative nurse outcomes, such as job dissatisfaction and burnout. If the nurse is feeling exhausted every single night, she has 6, 7 patients, she then leaves that job to find another one. So this leads to staff retention issues. And then the facility has to go and hire new nurses, so that increases the cost as well. Addressing the patient-nurse ratio would be a good solution to the current nursing shortage that exists in our state. Having mandated nurse staffing also decreases patient wait times in emergency rooms and decreases the care time in emergency departments. So, out of all the states in America, California passed this law in 2004 that mandates specific nurse-to-patient ratios. And they found that this law was associated with 55.57 fewer injuries and illnesses per 10,000 nurses per year. So that's 32% lower than the rate without that law. So the corresponding estimated reduction in injury and illnesses for the nurses was 38%. So this just goes to show how in California they mandated the ratios at specific levels, and it led to decreased illnesses and injuries among the staff. This is just a picture of the standards that they have. So if it's more critical, the ratio is lower, obviously. So intensive care, 1 nurse to 2 patients, and then it just increases all the way down to psychiatric units where it's 1 nurse per 6 patients. And the important thing to remember with this is that the ratios stay the same no matter what shift you work. I know, like in my job, in my workplace, day shift only get a max of 6 patients, while if you work night shift, you can get 8 patients. So I think that's a little unfair as well, but in California, the ratio remains the same no matter what shift. This issue is really important to me. Obviously, I work night shift and I see the effects of the ratios. I personally see this. There's a study done, and they found the conclusion that on the off shifts, which includes the night shift, working weekends, working holidays, patients are at higher risk for poor outcomes. This is because there's lower levels of staffing, and that's a key factor associated with these adverse effects. So from what I've experienced at work, on night shift we have a lot of inadequate staff. There's an inadequate nurse-patient ratio, and this puts the patient at risk for falls, leads to increased med errors, which leads to nurse burnout. And we need to ensure that the quality of patient care doesn't decrease due to decreased staffing. I've seen that, well, I've noticed personally, if I have 8 patients one night, my quality of care for those people dramatically decreases as compared to if I only have 6 patients. The QSEN competency that relates to this issue is safety, obviously, for all the reasons that I've just mentioned. This competency focuses on preventing harm to the patient. Having safe nurse-to-patient ratios definitely impacts the safety and the environment of the patient and his or her care. So in closing, I'd like to say that safer nurse-to-patient ratios needs to be implemented either in safety committees at the specific facility or by mandated at the state level in order to ensure patient safety and to decrease nurse burnout and turnover. My discussion question for everyone is, do you think Pennsylvania should mandate nurse-patient ratios? And if not, what else can be done in regards to this issue to ensure patient safety?